My name is Naomi Collins. I'm 32 years old. And before you decide what kind of daughter you think I am, before you picture me as cold, petty, or attention-starved, understand this. I didn't wake up one day and choose war with my own family. They chose it first. They chose it in 1,000 small moments that looked harmless on the outside, moments that sounded like laughter in a dining room, like praise, like family traditions. But when you're the child who's always last in line for love, those moments don't feel small. They feel like training. Last Tuesday, I walked into my parents' house in the suburbs of Charlotte with the same careful posture I'd worn my whole life. Shoulders relaxed, smile light, voice polite, a version of me designed not to make waves. The front yard still looked like a brochure, white colonial, trimmed hedges, porch lights glowing warm like an invitation. It always amazed me how a house could look so welcoming and still feel like a place you needed permission to exist in. I parked my 7-year-old Honda Civic behind my brother's black Mercedes SUV, the one that always seemed freshly washed, like it had its own self-esteem. As I stepped out, the air smelled like cut grass and somebody else's comfort. I stood there for a second, keys in my hand, and had the strangest thought. If I turned around right now, no one would chase me. That's what invisibility does. It teaches you the shape of absence. It teaches you what you can remove from a room without anyone noticing. Inside, the house was loud in that familiar way. TV murmuring in the living room, Mom's voice from the kitchen, the clink of glasses. The smell of pot roast hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. Mom's signature dish, her way of announcing, "I did my part, now behave." "Now," Dad called when he saw me. The name stretched into something cheerful, something that would sound convincing to a stranger. He crossed the room and kissed my cheek. There was affection in it. And also a kind of guilt that had always been there, like an unpaid bill. "You made it," he said. "Of course," I replied, because I always did. Then I heard my brother's laugh, Nathan's laugh, deep, confident, the laugh of someone who never had to wonder if the room belonged to him. He was already seated at the dining table like it was a throne he'd been born into. 3 years older than me, broad-shouldered, handsome in that polished way that made people assume competence. His wife Veronica sat beside him, bracelets glittering when she moved, her smile as sharp as a mirrored edge. "Nao," Nathan said, eyes flicking down and up like he was scanning a price tag. "Still driving the Civic?" "It still works," I said lightly, hanging my coat. Veronica laughed like that was adorable. "God, you're so practical." Practical. The word people use when they can't find anything else to compliment. I slid into my usual chair, slightly off-center, slightly out of the main conversation's path. My old seat. The one that taught my body where not to take up space. Only one person looked directly at me like I was real. Aunt Dorothy. She sat diagonally across the table, leather jacket draped over the back of her chair like a dare. Her hair was cut in a sleek bob, silver at the edges now. Real estate had been her first love, and she wore that love the way other women wore diamonds. Bright, unapologetic. Her eyes met mine, steady and knowing. No pity, no "are you okay?" Just a quiet "I see you." Dinner started the way it always did. Dad pouring wine with generous hands, Mom bustling in and out of the kitchen, Nathan and Veronica trading updates like they were giving a press conference about their own importance. Dad didn't even pretend to ease into it. "So," he said, grinning as he refilled Nathan's glass first, "tell us about the house, the new home theater system." Nathan leaned back, hands behind his head, the picture of ease. Bose setup, 7 speakers, projector. The installer said it's basically a cinema. Veronica leaned in, bracelets jangling, and the screen drops down from the ceiling. It's insane. We're hosting a Super Bowl party next month. Mom clasped her hands like she was praying. "My babies," she sighed, beaming at them. "You've built such a beautiful life." I cut into my pot roast slowly, tasting salt and habit. I'd heard this story so many times that my brain could recite it before Dad spoke. Nathan as proof of success. Nathan as the family's shining investment. Nathan as the reason the rest of us were supposed to clap. And then, like always, Dad's gaze slid to me with that familiar mix of pity and patronizing concern. "Naomi," he said, voice softening in that tone adults use when they're trying to be kind to someone they don't respect. "You should really see their place. The architecture alone is worth the visit. Those crown moldings, those ceilings, it's something." Veronica smiled. Nathan smirked. The table chuckled like we were all in on a harmless joke. And there it was, the same script, the same punchline. My life was always the setup. Your little townhouse is nice, Dad continued, waving a hand like he was describing a starter home in a board game. But maybe one day you'll have something like Nathan's. There are levels to this. Levels. The word hit something deep in me, not because it was new, but because it was old. It was Mom baking brownies when Nathan got a B minus, while my blue ribbon from the school fair sat folded in my hand until the paper crumpled. It was my swim photo in the Charlotte Observer, my shoulders still damp, my smile too wide, and Mom not coming because Nathan needed support at a game where he barely played. It was my scholarship letter to UNC, the one I held like a passport out of that house, and the only response being a distracted, "That's nice, sweetie." Later never came. That was the pattern. That was the training. I felt my fork pause midair. Aunt Dorothy's gaze didn't move. She didn't rescue me. She just gave me the smallest nod. "This is your moment." I set the fork down carefully. The metal clink against the plate sounded louder than it should have, like the room had been waiting for a different kind of noise. Dad kept talking, oblivious to the shift in my posture. "I just want you to aim higher, Naomi. You're smart, but you're, quiet." Quiet. Another word for invisible. I leaned back in my chair and felt something inside me go perfectly still. Not rage, not chaos. Control. When you've spent your whole life being underestimated, you learn how to hold power without shaking. I smiled. Not sweetly, not apologetically, just calmly. "Actually," I said, voice even, "I bought that entire street last year." Silence snapped into place so fast it felt physical. Dad's wineglass froze halfway to his mouth. Mom's smile hung there, confused, like her face forgot what expression to wear when the script changed. Nathan's smirk dissolved into something sharp and suspicious. Veronica's hand stopped mid-reach for her water glass, fingers hovering like she'd been caught stealing. I didn't rush. I let the silence do its work. Then I finished, looking straight at my brother. "Nathan's house included." Dad blinked. "What?" "Myers Park," I said, "the street your house sits on." Nathan laughed once, too loud, too forced. "That's not funny." "It wasn't a joke," I replied. Mom's voice came out thin. "Naomi, what are you talking about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone with the kind of calm that scares people more than shouting. I opened a folder I'd kept ready, not because I wanted to humiliate them, but because some part of me had always known they would push until they hit bone. I slid the screen across the table. Deed summary, LLC records, property list, 12 addresses, 1 owner. Mine. Dad's hand shook as he took the phone and scrolled, his face strained, line by line. Mom leaned over his shoulder, lips moving silently as she read, trying to make reality spell something else. Nathan's expression went pale in slow motion, like the blood was evacuating him one insult at a time. Veronica whispered, "This can't be real." "It is," I said. "I bought the whole package, 12 homes, 18 months ago, 8.4 million. Nathan's voice cracked with disbelief. "But you live in a townhouse." "I rent it," I said, still calm. "You drive a Honda. It's paid off." Dad looked up, eyes wide now, not proud, not angry, just stunned. "Why?" he breathed, like the question wasn't about the purchase, but about the person he never bothered to know. I held his gaze. "Because I prefer investing my money," I said, "instead of spending it on appearances." The silence became unbearable. It pressed against the walls, against their throats. Then I looked at Nathan. "You've been paying me every month," I said quietly. "Not directly. Through the management company, through the LLC. Veronica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Nathan stared at me like I'd turned into a stranger in front of him. Like he'd just realized the quiet sister he'd dismissed was holding the strings. Aunt Dorothy lifted her wine glass slightly, not triumphantly. More like a private toast to survival. Mom's face tightened. "Why would you hide this? This is deceitful." That word. Deceitful. Something inside me finally broke, not into chaos, but into truth. "Deceitful," I repeated, tasting it, like promising to look at my project later and never doing it, like skipping my swim championship because Nathan needed support at a game where he sat on the bench, like throwing him parties and giving me Hallmark cards 2 days late. Dad flinched. Mom's jaw clenched. Nathan stared down at the phone like it might burn him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "I didn't come here to gloat," I said. "I came because you invited me to another dinner where you'd make me feel small." I stood gathering my bag. "But I'm done feeling small," I continued, voice steady as steel. "I'm done being invisible." Dad swallowed hard. "Naomi, wait." I turned toward the hallway, the front door glowing softly at the end like an exit sign. Then I paused, just long enough for the last line to land. You raised me to be invisible, I said, not looking back. Congratulations, you succeeded. And I walked out, closing the door behind me with a quiet that sounded like an ending. I slept like someone who'd finally stopped holding her breath. Not peacefully, no. More like my body crashed, hard, the way it does after an accident. When the adrenaline drains and your bones remember what fear feels like. When I woke up, sunlight was spilling through the cheap blinds of my rented townhouse, striping my living room in pale gold. The air smelled like yesterday's coffee and the lavender candle I always lit when I needed to convince myself I was safe. My phone was face down on the kitchen counter. I already knew what would be on it. Still, my hand hesitated before I flipped it over, like I was lifting the lid on something rotten. 17 missed calls, 24 unread texts, 3 voicemails, all from my family. My chest tightened, not with regret, never regret, but with that old familiar feeling, the sense that I had just done something they would punish me for. Because that's what happens when the quiet child stops being quiet. The first text was from Mom. Naomi, we need to talk now. What you did was unacceptable. The second was from Dad. Please, let's discuss this like adults. Then Nathan, you embarrassed me in front of everyone. What is wrong with you? And Veronica, of course it was Veronica. This is why we never include you. You're jealous and petty. You always have been. I stared at the screen, surprised by how little it hurt. Not because her words weren't cruel, but because they were predictable. And predictable cruelty loses its power when you finally stop begging for love from it. I didn't respond. I didn't type a single angry sentence. I did something quieter. I opened my settings, clicked Nathan's number, and blocked it. Then Veronica's. Blocked. My finger hovered for a second over Mom's contact. I didn't block her yet. Not because she deserved access, because I wanted to see what she chose to say when she realized she couldn't scare me back into my place. I made coffee, strong, black. Then I carried the mug out to my tiny balcony and sat in a plastic chair that didn't match anything, watching Charlotte wake up like it had no idea my entire family had just detonated. Cars passed, a dog barked, somewhere someone laughed. And for the first time in my life, I felt something strange and sharp and clean. Relief. My phone buzzed again. A new name. Aunt Dorothy. I answered on the first ring. You okay, kid? She asked. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the smile under it, pride disguised as casual. I exhaled. I'm awake. Dorothy chuckled softly. That's one way to put it. There was a beat of silence, comfortable, like she knew I didn't need advice. Then she said, I'm proud of you. I swallowed hard. Those 4 words landed heavier than any insult my mother could throw. Thank you, I managed. You had guts, she continued, and you didn't scream. That's what scares people. Calm truth. I stared out at the street below, my neighbor backing out of their driveway, a kid hopping into a car with a backpack. I didn't plan it, I said, even though that was only half true. I just couldn't sit there again. Dorothy's voice softened. You've been sitting there your whole life. I closed my eyes for a second. They're going to make me the villain. They already did, Dorothy said. Now they just have to decide if they want to live in that story forever. My phone buzzed again, another call trying to cut in. I looked at the screen. Dad. I let it ring. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. Not yet. Listen, Dorothy said, lowering her tone. I don't know what you want from them, but I do know this. Don't let them bait you into explaining your worth. You don't owe them your resume. I let out a short laugh, one that almost became a sob, but didn't. Yeah, I whispered. I know. I'll check in later, she said. And Naomi? Yeah? If your father shows up, you control the door, not him. Then she hung up. I sat there for a long moment, coffee cooling in my hand, heart doing that slow, uneasy thud like it was learning a new rhythm. Then my phone rang again. This time it wasn't family. It was Chloe. She didn't say hello. She said, I heard dinner was eventful. I snorted genuinely. Who told you? I have sources, she said, smug as always. Banking sources, neighborhood sources. Charlotte has the gossip metabolism of a middle school. I leaned my head back against the balcony wall. So, it's out. It's starting to be out, she corrected. And I need you to tell me exactly what happened before I hear the dramatic version from Veronica's Instagram story. I closed my eyes. And then, because Chloe was safe, because Chloe had known me before I became a secret, I told her everything. The pot roast smell, Dad's levels, Nathan's smirk, Aunt Dorothy's nod. The moment I said it, I bought that entire street, Nathan's house included. When I finished, Chloe exhaled a long, low whistle. Naomi Collins, she said, reverent. You do realize you just lived every quiet girl's fantasy. It didn't feel like a fantasy, I murmured. No, she admitted. It felt like justice. I stared at the sky. pale blue, indifferent. I'm tired, Chloe, I said. I'm tired of shrinking my life so they can feel tall. There was a pause and her voice softened. So what happens now? I thought about that. What happens now? When you stop being invisible? I keep building, I said. They can accept reality or they can choke on it. That's my girl, she said quietly. Also, you know they'll come for you, right? I know. And you're okay with that? I looked at my own hands, steady, not shaking. Yeah, I said, because for the first time, I'm not scared of being the bad guy in someone else's story. Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, Call me if you need anything. And Naomi? Yeah? I'm proud of you. After we hung up, the apartment felt too silent. I cleaned because cleaning was something my body understood when my mind didn't. I wiped counters that were already clean, folded blankets that didn't need folding. Then, around noon, the knock came. Not a polite tap. A hesitant, weighted knock. Like the person on the other side wasn't sure they deserved to be let in. I froze. My heart did that stupid thing where it thought we were still children, and Dad's disappointment could end the world. Then I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Dad stood there. No tie, no cheerful voice, no, how's my favorite girl? Just him in a plain jacket, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly slumped. He looked older, smaller, and for a second I hated how that made me feel. Because some part of me still wanted to protect him from consequences. I opened the door, but I didn't step back right away. Hi, he said, voice rough. Hi, I replied. He swallowed. Can I come in? I studied him. This was the moment Dorothy warned me about. Control the door. I stepped aside just enough. He entered like a guest, not like a father who owned the space. He glanced around at my townhouse. The simple furniture, the neutral walls, the lack of success on display. It was clean, quiet, mine. He sat on the edge of the couch instead of sinking into it, like he didn't want to get comfortable. I didn't know, he said finally. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know was a sentence that always came too late. He rubbed his hands together, nervous. Your mother... Don't, I said softly. He stopped. I sat across from him, posture straight, hands relaxed in my lap. The calm in my body felt unfamiliar, like wearing clothes that finally fit. Dad's eyes flicked toward the kitchen. This place is nice. I thought you were struggling. I was never struggling, I said. I was strategic. He nodded slowly, like the word tasted bitter. The silence stretched. Then he said, When you said those things last night, about the swim meet, the scholarship, the project, my throat tightened. Not because he was wrong, because he remembered, even if he never acted like it. You were right, he said, voice breaking slightly. We failed you. Hearing it should have felt like a win. Instead, it felt like being handed flowers at a funeral. I'm not looking for an apology, I said. An apology doesn't give me back my childhood. He flinched, but he didn't argue. I know, he whispered, but I needed you to hear me say it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his face that looked like shame without defensiveness. I should have stood up to her, he said. I should have made it different. I stared at him, the anger in me quiet but present, like a sleeping animal. You didn't, I said simply. He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. I didn't. Another pause. Then he said it, the thing I knew he came to deliver like a message from the other side. Your mother wants you to apologize to Nathan. I laughed. Not a sweet laugh. A sharp, startled laugh, like my body couldn't believe he'd walked into my home and still tried to hand me that burden. No, I said. Dad lifted his hands quickly. I told her you wouldn't. I told her she's being unreasonable. Is that new? I asked, tilting my head. Or is that just you trying to feel better today? His face tightened, the truth landing. I'm trying, he admitted, but it might be too late. I held his gaze. It is too late for the old version of us, I said. The version where I swallow everything so you can pretend the family is fine. He nodded slowly. I understand. Then quieter. I'm proud of you, Naomi. The words hung in the air. They were everything I'd wanted as a child, and almost nothing I needed now. I hear you, I said. He swallowed. That's all I hoped for. When he stood, he didn't move toward me like he expected a hug. He moved toward the door. Halfway there, he turned back. One more thing, he said, voice low. Your brother. He's in trouble, financial trouble. I didn't blink. I'd suspected it for months. Chloe's whispers, Dorothy's hints, the way Nathan and Veronica posted luxury like a prayer. Dad continued, Your mother is panicking. She wants to fix it. I leaned back slightly. And you came here to ask me to fix it. Dad hesitated. I came here to warn you, he said carefully, because whatever happens next, they're going to blame you. I stared at him, heart steady. Let them, I said. Dad looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to protect me the way he never did when I was 12 and invisible. But he didn't. He just nodded once, like he understood this was the consequence of his silence. Then he left. When the door shut behind him, my townhouse felt louder than before, not with noise, but with the echo of what he'd said. Nathan was in trouble. Mom was panicking, and the family needed a villain. I walked back to the balcony, sat down, and let the cold air settle against my skin. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt anticipation, because I knew something they didn't. The dinner wasn't the explosion. It was the spark. And my mother had always been the kind of woman who poured gasoline when she felt cornered. If my childhood taught me anything, it was this. My mother didn't apologize. She rewrote history. 3 days after the dinner, the first voicemail came in at 6:42 a.m. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen counter with my laptop open, reviewing lease renewals for 2 duplexes near Uptown. Numbers had always calmed me. Numbers didn't gaslight you. They didn't pretend they never said what they said. My phone vibrated once, then again. I didn't answer. I listened. Naomi, Mom's voice said, clipped and tight. I don't know what you think you proved the other night, but you embarrassed this family. You humiliated your brother. And frankly, I don't recognize you anymore. I deleted it. The next voicemail was longer, softer, more dangerous. Sweetheart, she said, voice wobbling with carefully measured sadness. Your father is very upset. Nathan is beside himself. We need to sit down as a family and talk this through. You've always been so reasonable. I know you didn't mean to hurt anyone. That one stayed. Not because I believed it, because I needed the reminder of how easily love became leverage in her mouth. By Friday, the story had fully transformed. According to my mother, I hadn't simply revealed a truth. I had betrayed them. She called my aunt in Raleigh, my cousin in Greensboro, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. The narrative spread like mold. Naomi was jealous. Naomi was vindictive. Naomi had tricked her own brother just to make a point. Funny how no one asked why the quiet daughter suddenly had so much power. They only cared that she used it. I found out through Aunt Dorothy. She called me mid-afternoon, her voice dry and unimpressed. Your mother is telling people you planned this to punish Nathan, she said, that you bought the street just to humiliate him one day. I stared at the spreadsheet on my screen. Did she really say that? Oh, she dressed it up, Dorothy replied, used words like premeditated and manipulative. I laughed under my breath. That's rich. She's scared, Dorothy said. And when your mother is scared, she needs someone else to bleed. I closed my laptop. What's really going on? I asked. Dorothy didn't answer right away. That was how I knew it was bad. Nathan and Veronica took out a home equity loan last year, she finally said. A big one. Renovations, vacations, lifestyle inflation dressed up as investment. My jaw tightened. I'd suspected it. Chloe's quiet hints, the timing of their upgrades, the way their spending accelerated the moment interest rates dipped. Can they cover it? I asked. No, Dorothy said bluntly. They're behind already, and the bank's getting aggressive. I exhaled slowly. There it was. The real reason my mother was panicking. Not because I'd hurt her feelings. Because her golden child was about to fall. And for the first time in my life, she couldn't reach into my pocket to save him. She's talking about using her retirement fund, Dorothy continued. Your father said no. That made me pause. He said no, I repeated. Dorothy huffed. I almost dropped the phone. That was new. Dad had always been the man who smoothed things over, who paid quietly, who told himself keeping the peace was the same as being kind. What happened? I asked. He told her he was done enabling, Dorothy said. Used that word. Enabling. Said he wasn't going to sacrifice the rest of their future to preserve a lie. A sharp, unfamiliar emotion flickered in my chest. Not hope. Recognition. And Mom? I asked. She lost her mind, Dorothy said. Called him selfish, accused him of choosing you over Nathan, threatened to leave. I closed my eyes. Of course she framed it that way. There was never room in her story for accountability, only competition. Naomi, Dorothy added carefully, you need to be prepared. She's going to come to you next. I didn't answer right away, because I already knew. I'd lived my whole life as her emotional spare tire, only noticed when something went flat. Let her, I said finally. Dorothy exhaled. Good, because here's the part you're not going to like. I opened my eyes. Nathan figured it out, she said. My pulse ticked up. Figured what out? He knows you're the landlord, Dorothy replied. Not just that you own the street, that you are the reason the bank won't renegotiate. I leaned back in my chair. That's not true, I said evenly. I know, Dorothy said, but truth has never stopped him before. The knock came that evening. Not Dad, not Mom, Nathan. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know it was him. His knock was heavier, impatient, like the door owed him something. I stayed where I was for a full 10 seconds. Let him knock again, then again. Finally, I opened the door, but I didn't step aside. Nathan stood there, face tight, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitch. Veronica hovered behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed thin. "Move," Nathan said. "No," I replied calmly. His eyes flicked over my shoulder, taking in my small living room, like it offended him. "We need to talk," he snapped. "You're talking," I said. He scoffed. "You think this is funny?" "I think you're trespassing," I said. "So choose your words carefully." Veronica laughed, sharp and humorless. "Wow, power really went to your head fast, didn't it?" I didn't look at her. My focus stayed on my brother, the boy who used to take the last slice of pizza and tell me I should have been faster. "What do you want, Nathan?" I asked. "You," he said, stepping closer, "to fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "Fix what?" "You know exactly what," he said. "The bank, the loan, the pressure. You're the one pulling the strings." I felt something inside me go very still. "I don't control the bank," I said, "and I didn't tell you to live beyond your means." His face reddened. "Don't do that. Don't act superior." "I'm not acting," I replied. "This is just how it looks when you're standing on the other side." Veronica stepped forward. "You could help us," she said, voice syrupy now. "You have the money. You always did. You just chose not to share it." I laughed softly. "You mean like Mom and Dad shared with me?" I asked. Nathan slammed his palm against the doorframe. "This isn't about childhood." "It always is," I said. His voice dropped. "You're enjoying this." I met his gaze. "No," I said honestly. "I'm exhausted by it." He stared at me, breathing hard. For a moment, just one, I saw fear crack through his anger. Real fear. The kind he'd never had to sit with before. "I thought you were small," he said quietly. "I thought you needed us." The words hit harder than any insult, because they were the truth. "You didn't think about me at all," I replied. "You just assumed." Veronica scoffed. "So what, you're going to watch us lose everything?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not watching," I said. "I'm living my life." Nathan's laugh broke, sharp and ugly. "You always hated me." I shook my head. "I hated being invisible," I said. "You just happened to benefit from it." Silence settled between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Nathan straightened. "Mom's going to give us the money," he said, defiant. "She won't let this happen." Something cold slid down my spine. "Don't," I said. He sneered. "Don't what?" "Don't let her ruin herself trying to save you," I said quietly. "That's her choice," he shot back. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "And this," I said, "is yours." He held my gaze for a long second. Then he turned sharply and walked away, Veronica following without another word. I closed the door and locked it. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't. Because for the first time, I understood something clearly. I didn't want my family to suffer. I wanted them to stop lying. And those two things were no longer compatible. That night, I sat on my couch, lights off, city glow filtering in through the blinds. I thought about the power dynamic no one talks about. How, when you grow up powerless, you imagine power will feel like relief. But real power feels like responsibility. And responsibility hurts when it belongs to people who never protected you. My phone buzzed once more. A text from Mom. "If you don't help your brother, you will tear this family apart." I stared at the words. Then I typed my reply slowly, deliberately. I didn't tear this family apart. I stopped holding it together alone. I hit send. And for the first time since the dinner, I cried. Not because I regretted anything, but because some losses only reveal themselves when you finally refuse to pay their cost. 3 months passed. Not quietly. Nothing about my life was quiet anymore, but deliberately. The noise from my family faded first. Mom's voicemail stopped swinging between accusation and faux concern and settled into silence. Nathan didn't come back to my door. Veronica blocked me on social media like that was some kind of victory. And in the space they left behind, something unexpected happened. Emptiness. Not grief, not regret. Just a hollow pause, like my life had been running on one fuel for decades. Prove them wrong, and suddenly the tank was dry. I was good at winning. I'd never practiced what came after. One Tuesday morning, I sat in my office with 3 quarterly reports open, my coffee untouched. My properties were doing well, better than projected, rental income steady, maintenance costs down, vacancy near 0. By every metric I'd chased for years, I had succeeded. And yet my chest felt strangely flat. Chloe noticed before I did. She showed up unannounced with pastries, and that look she got when she was about to ruin your denial. You look like someone who won a war and forgot to plan peace, she said, dropping into the chair across from me. I'm busy, I replied automatically. She slid a croissant toward me. You're hollow. I frowned. I exposed my family's favoritism on accident, detonated a decades-long lie, and cut contact with half my relatives. Hollow feels dramatic. Chloe leaned back. Naomi, you didn't want revenge. You wanted truth, and now you've got it. I stared at my screen. So why do I feel like I just crossed a finish line and found out there's nothing on the other side? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, tell me something. When were you happiest this year? The answer came too fast. When I talked to that intern at the management company, I said, the one from West Charlotte, she thought she wasn't smart enough for finance because no one had ever shown her how money actually works. Chloe smiled slowly. There it is. I blinked. There what is? You don't want to be admired, she said. You want to open doors. The idea hit me sideways. A door. Not just for me. For the girl I used to be. That afternoon, I called Aunt Dorothy. I want to start something, I said without preamble. She didn't ask what. She asked, how big? Big enough to matter, I replied. We met 2 days later at a quiet cafe downtown. Dorothy in her leather jacket, me with my notebook full of half-formed ideas. I don't want to just give scholarships, I said. I want to teach kids how to see opportunity, credit, property, negotiation. The stuff no one teaches you unless your parents already won. Dorothy's eyes lit up. Mentorship, she said. Education, exposure. Yes, I nodded. For kids who grew up overlooked, underestimated. Kids who were told to be grateful for scraps. Dorothy took a sip of her coffee. You know your mother will hate this. I smiled faintly. Then I know I'm on the right track. The Collins Foundation for Youth Opportunity took shape faster than I expected. Lawyers, accountants, paperwork. I committed $200,000 in seed funding without blinking. Pledged 5% of my annual rental income moving forward. It felt less like giving something up and more like putting money where it finally belonged. Chloe wrote the article. She didn't frame it as a revenge story. She framed it as a correction. Local real estate investor turns silence into strategy for underserved youth. The calls started coming in. Schools, donors, nonprofits. And then came the first workshop. It was held at a community center in West Charlotte. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a whiteboard that squeaked when I wrote on it. 20 students showed up. Most of them looked at me like they were waiting for the catch. I recognized that look. I stood at the front, hands loosely clasped, heart pounding in a way no business pitch ever caused. I grew up invisible, I told them. Not poor, not unsafe, just unseen. They leaned in. My family didn't teach me how money worked, I continued. So I taught myself, and I'm here to tell you something important. I paused. Other people's blindness does not define your worth. After the session, a girl approached me. 16, sharp eyes, nervous smile. Her name was Shanice. Ms. Collins, she asked quietly, is this real? Like, can people like us actually do this? I knelt slightly to meet her eye level. People like you already are, I said. You just haven't been shown how yet. Her smile was blinding. The foundation grew. Monthly workshops, scholarships, mentors. Dorothy brought in real estate colleagues. Chloe connected me with financial educators. We hired 2 part-time staff. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Nathan and Veronica lost the house, I heard through Dorothy. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Charlotte. Extra jobs, late nights, reality. Mom stopped calling entirely. Dad texted once. Saw the foundation in the paper. You're doing good things. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. Because for the first time, my life wasn't waiting on their response. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Collins, a breathless voice said. It's Shanice. I got in. I sat down hard. Got in where? UNC Charlotte, she said, laughing through tears. Full scholarship, business program. My eyes burned. That's incredible, I whispered. I wouldn't have applied if it wasn't for you, she said. You showed me I wasn't crazy for wanting more. When the call ended, I stayed seated for a long time. That was it. That was the feeling I'd been chasing my whole life. Not approval. Impact. That night, standing on my balcony, city lights flickering below, I understood something with absolute clarity. The dinner wasn't the climax. It was the release. And what I was building now, this was the real story. The first sign that everything had truly collapsed came in the form of a text from Aunt Dorothy that simply read, "It's done." No emojis, no context. Just those 2 words sitting on my screen like a verdict. I didn't ask her to explain. I already knew what it meant. Nathan and Veronica lost the house. Not downsized. Not temporarily relocated. Lost. The kind of loss that strips people of excuses. The kind that leaves a paper trail and neighbors who stop waving. I found out the details later, piece by piece, the way you always do with family disasters, through whispers and secondhand updates and carefully edited versions of the truth. They'd fought the foreclosure until the last possible moment. Missed payments stacked like dominoes. The bank stopped negotiating. The notices became impossible to ignore. The house, their house, the one Mom bragged about like it was a reflection of her own success, went back to the lender. The irony sat heavy in my chest, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because no one could pretend anymore. Nathan moved his things into a 2-bedroom apartment nearly 40 minutes from the neighborhood he'd once paraded like proof of superiority. Veronica picked up extra shifts. Nathan started consulting on the side, trying to outrun the numbers that no longer bent for him. And my mother shattered. According to Dorothy, she cried in grocery store parking lots. She stopped going to church. She told anyone who would listen that her family had turned against her, that I had turned against her. She says you enjoyed it, Dorothy told me over the phone. Says you wanted this. I closed my eyes. That's easier than admitting she built a hierarchy and called it love, I said. Dorothy sighed. Your father finally moved out. That made me sit down. When? Last week, she replied. Downtown condo. Small place. He started therapy. I stared at the wall, a strange tightness in my throat. Therapy. The word felt like a door he'd refused to open for decades. She's furious, Dorothy continued. Says he chose you over the family. I almost laughed. No, I said quietly. He chose reality. That night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I hadn't seen in months. Nathan. I stared at the screen for a long time. Long enough to decide I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I answered. What do you want? I asked, keeping my voice level. Silence. Then a breath. I didn't know who else to call, he said. The admission cracked something open. Why are you calling me now? I asked. Because everything fell apart, he said. And I finally get it. I didn't respond right away. I waited to see if he would keep going. He did. You were right, Nathan said, about all of it. The money, the attention, the way we let it happen. His voice was rough, stripped of performance. I thought you were small, he repeated softly. I thought you needed us, and I used that. I closed my eyes. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I'm tired of pretending, he said, and because I owe you an apology. There it was. Not dramatic, not defensive. Just late. I'm sorry, Naomi, he said, for every time I let you disappear. My chest tightened, not with forgiveness, but with recognition. I let the silence stretch. Finally, I said, I hear you. Not it's okay. Not I forgive you. Just the truth. I don't expect anything from you, he added quickly. I'm not asking for help. I just needed you to know. I believed him. That surprised me. We hung up without ceremony. No promises, no plans. Just a clean end to a conversation that should have happened years earlier. A week later, Dad showed up again. This time he looked different. Lighter. Not happier. Lighter. I'm in therapy, he said as soon as I opened the door. Twice a week. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat on my couch like someone who didn't feel entitled to the space anymore. I spent my whole life avoiding conflict, he said. Calling it love, calling it peace. I nodded. I see now how much damage that did, he continued. To you. To all of us. I studied his face. He wasn't asking for absolution. That mattered. I'm not here to fix anything, he said. I just wanted to tell you. I'm trying to be better, even if it's too late for us. I surprised myself by answering honestly. It's not too late, I said. It's just different now. He smiled sadly. I can live with that. After he left, I sat alone, thinking about how strange it was to finally be heard, after I no longer needed it. A few days later, Chloe sent me a screenshot. An article. Local mother claims daughter, destroyed family, after property reveal. I didn't read it. I didn't need to, because I already knew the ending of that story. It wasn't about me. It was about a woman who'd confused control for love and couldn't survive without it. That evening, I received another call. Shanice again. I started my summer prep program, she said, breathless. They asked us to introduce ourselves and say why we were there. And? I asked. I said I'm here because someone finally saw me, she replied. Tears filled my eyes. In that moment, everything aligned. The fall of my brother. The unraveling of my parents. The foundation. The girl on the other end of the phone. This was the truth no one ever tells you. Closure doesn't come from watching people who hurt you suffer. It comes from realizing you no longer need them to understand. And as the golden child hit the ground, I kept building upward. A year changes things. Not the way movies promise. No clean resolutions, no swelling music when everyone finally understands. Just distance, perspective, and the slow realization that some relationships don't break. They simply stop growing. By the time the anniversary of that dinner approached, my life no longer revolved around what my family was doing or undoing. The Collins Foundation for Youth Opportunity had become a living thing. Monthly workshops turned into wait lists. Scholarships doubled. Mentorship sessions filled entire Saturdays. 200 students served, 12 enrolled in college, 3 small businesses launched by kids who had never been told they were business material. My property portfolio grew quietly in the background. 21 units now, steady cash flow, no drama. I sold 2 underperforming properties and reinvested in a mixed-use development near uptown Charlotte. I stopped checking my family group chat entirely. Then, one evening, Dad texted, "Can I stop by, just to talk?" I stared at the message longer than necessary. Not because I was afraid, because I was deciding what version of myself would answer. "Okay," I replied, for a little while. When he arrived, he looked different again. Not defeated. Not guilty. Aware. "I'm learning words I should have learned years ago," he said as he sat down. "Codependency, conflict avoidance, emotional outsourcing." I nodded. "Those sound familiar." He smiled faintly. "Therapy has a way of ruining your excuses." We talked for an hour. About his childhood. About how keeping the peace became his identity. About how watching my mother unravel forced him to see the cost of his silence. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said at one point. "I know I don't get to decide when or if that happens." I appreciated that more than he knew. "I don't need forgiveness," I replied. "I need honesty, and you're finally doing that." He nodded, eyes glossy. "You're extraordinary, Naomi. You always were." This time the words didn't ache. They just existed. Before he left, he hesitated at the door. "Your mother won't reach out," he said quietly. "Not unless you apologize first." "I won't," I said. "I know," he replied. "I wanted you to hear it from me." After he left, I sat alone in my living room, lights off, city glowing through the blinds. There was no triumph in me, only clarity. My mother didn't want a relationship. She wanted obedience, and I was done offering that currency. A week later, a text came in. From Nathan. "I get it now. I'm sorry." That was it. No excuses, no explanations, no pressure. I didn't answer immediately. I let him sit with the silence I'd lived in for years. 3 days later, I replied, "I hope you're doing okay." Nothing more. Nothing less. That response wasn't cruelty. It was proportion. On the 1-year anniversary of the dinner, Chloe took me out. Upscale restaurant, white tablecloths, expensive wine we didn't pretend to feel guilty about. She raised her glass. To the woman who stopped shrinking. I clinked mine against hers. To building without permission. We laughed. We ate. We talked about what came next. And for the first time, I realized something quietly profound. My family no longer defined the edges of my life. They were just part of the background. The strange thing about freedom is that it doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't kick down doors or announce itself with fireworks. It settles. A year after that dinner, after the silence, the fallout, the rewiring of my entire life, I sat on the same small balcony of my rented townhouse, legs tucked beneath me, watching Charlotte glow as the sun slipped behind the skyline. Same place, different woman. The Collins Foundation for Youth Opportunity had just closed its annual report. $175,000 in scholarships awarded. Over 200 students served. 12 enrolled in college programs. 3 running small businesses with actual revenue. Shanice was one of them. She called me that afternoon, her voice bright and steady now, not asking if it was possible anymore, but telling me what she'd built. "I'm starting a campus investment club," she said, "for first-gen students. We're doing mock deals and learning credit structures." I smiled so hard my face hurt. "Of course you are," I said. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet and let the feeling move through me. This was what success felt like. Not being seen by people who overlooked you, but becoming the person who refuses to overlook others. Aunt Dorothy came over that evening with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine she insisted we didn't save for special occasions. We ate on the balcony, paper containers between us, city humming below. "Have you heard from them?" she asked gently. I knew who she meant. "Dad texts occasionally," I said. "Mom doesn't." Dorothy nodded. "She's struggling." I didn't rush to fill the silence. "I'm sorry she's hurting," I said finally, "but I can't heal something she refuses to name." Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's not cruelty. That's clarity." We ate in companionable quiet for a while. Then she asked the question people always ask once you stop bending. Do you regret it? I thought about the dinner, the pot roast, the laughter dying midair, the moment I finally spoke. I regret that it was necessary, I said slowly. I regret that they never saw me until I forced them to, but cutting ties, that saved me. Dorothy smiled. You built something remarkable. Not just properties, I said, not just money. She nodded. A legacy. 2 weeks later, Dad showed up again. No tension this time, no urgency. He looked lighter, like someone who'd finally put down a weight he'd carried since childhood. I wanted to tell you something, he said after we sat down. I'm learning how to live without appeasing everyone. That's new, I said softly. He smiled. It is. We talked, not as parent and child trying to rewrite history, but as two adults acknowledging it. When he left, he hugged me at the door. I'm proud of you, he said, even if I have no right to say that anymore. You can say it, I replied. It just doesn't own me now. Mom never reached out. Through Dorothy, I learned she told relatives I'd betrayed her, that I'd humiliated the family. It stung less than I expected. You can't be wounded by someone who never truly saw you. Nathan eventually texted again. No drama, no demands. Just, hope you're well. I replied, you too. And that was enough. On the anniversary night, Chloe and I sat in that restaurant, laughing, toasting, remembering the woman I used to be. You did it, she said, raising her glass. You built an empire and changed lives. I'm still building, I corrected. This is just the beginning. And it was. I had plans, expanding the foundation, buying more properties, creating programs that outlived me. But more than that, I carried one truth with me now, unshakable and earned. Your worth is not determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you build when no one is watching. I spent my childhood invisible, my 20s building in silence, and my 30s claiming space without apology. I'm Naomi Collins, property owner, foundation founder, mentor, architect of my own life. And this time, I built it on my terms.